Oh, there they are. Okay. Fourth line, last two words in the line. 98a. Omer Rabba says, potter. Somebody throws his friend's coin into the Mediterranean. He is exempt. My time, what's the reason? Omer hamonach kamach. See, what he does is he points to the coin, and let's say is 50 feet down in the Red Sea in the Mediterranean. He points to him and says, "Your coin's right over there. You can go get it." Iboy shakli. It's right over there. Go get it. Behind million. This is only true, but slulin, if the water is clear, like that you can see 50 feet down. Aval achurin, the loigachazi. By the way, lakes these days have ratings about what the typical depth visibility is. Aval achurin, the loigachazi. But if, let's say, it was dirty and you were not able to see it, then because you can see it, that's considered to have stolen it. Behind immediately the adi aduye. Al shakli biyade mizl gazli. Adi aduye is sort of where the guy pushes him, and then the coin falls overboard.
Look, he pushes him for no reason.
What? Yeah. Pushed him for no reason. But in that case, the guy could hire a diver and go collect the coin. Therefore, it's not considered stealing. If he grabbed the coin to put it in his own possession, then he stole it, and Hashova boy mevad, he has to return it. Mosav Rova asked, you can't redeem Ma'aser Sheni. So we said there's a number of different tithes on the the first, second, fourth, and fifth year. After you take off Ma'aser Rishon, you take off a Ma'aser called Ma'aser Sheni, a second tithe. Where does that go? It has to be in Jerusalem. What happens if you're far away and your agricultural product is one that would spoil quickly? So what you do is you redeem it onto a coin, and you bring the coins to Jerusalem and you buy stuff in Jerusalem. There's a condition though. Let's say your money is on the bottom of the Mediterranean. It doesn't work. You can't redeem your coins on that money. Ketzad has this work. He had money in a very distant place called Kastora. Or the mountain of the king. Or I believe the Har Melech means the money was confiscated. So it's his money, it's just locked up by the king. Or his wallet fell into the Mediterranean. And you cannot redeem Meiser because you don't have the money. Well, presumably, if you don't have the money, then the guy who pushed you and pushed the money into the Mediterranean should have the same status. He damaged you by pushing your coin into the Mediterranean, and therefore you should be able to collect from him. Rabba says, no. Shiny l'inyan ma'aser d'inyan motzi b'yadecha. There's a difference. Ma'aser sheni is very unique because it has to be motzi b'yadecha. That means it has to be spendable. It could be that even if the money is not spendable or easily spendable, you still wouldn't be considered a thief. The laws of stealing and damaging is different than the laws of Ma'aser Sheni. Okay, but Rabba says, Hashof matbeh shel chaveri. Somebody who negates the form on the coin, right? So a coin has a sort of a form, it's an imprint. If somebody negates the imprint, how do you do that? We'll get to it in a second. Then Potter, you're exempt. My time, he didn't really do anything. And we'll have to see if he really didn't do anything. We'll discuss that. Behind him, this is only true. The machia bekornus of a tarshi. This is only true if he took a mallet and he put the coin on an anvil and he slammed out the form of the coin. Because he didn't do vitarshi. But let's say he took a file or a sander and he sanded down the coin. Then you sort of made the coin worth less. Like they have the those penny machines that make you these funny pennies. It's like that idea. So if I think a penny like that is, it actually loses its status as legal tender. Now, if you did that,
For sure it does.
now if you did that to a guy's pennies, so the halacha is that you would be, you would, according to Rava, you'd be exempt.
But that's why you've got your milling around the coins.
What do you mean?
You know, you've got the
The lines.
The lines. Only some coins have lines.
Yeah,
Ridges.
yeah, to cut off, to show people have kind of trimmed the coins off.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a different thing, it immediately goes up in value.
What'd you
It
say?
immediately goes up in value.
Oh, all right.
Mosif Rava. Okay.
What if you
Right,
melt it down? What if it's worth more dead than alive? What if the metal is worth, you deface it, or you just melt down the coin, but the metal is worth more than the coin itself in just general parlance?
Yeah. That's the case with all pennies minted before 19, what's the date? 1989 or something? Something like that.
70
something?
73, I think.
73. So they stopped using copper.
Page position, Rabbi.
98, but halfway through the page. Okay, so let me just lay the background for the next question. The question is fundamentally as follows. So Rava here is presuming that defacing a coin does not actually remove anything from the coin. But sanding it, where you actually remove something, that's when you're chayav. And now we get to an interesting scenario where you made somebody deaf without hurting his ear. And that's supposed to be a similar scenario, where you didn't sand his ear down, right? Or sand his eardrum, whatever it was. You sort of made him deaf by banging it with a hammer. A sort of similar idea where everything is intact, guy's deaf now.
Where does the ear start and where does the ear end?
That's beside the point. It's technical. Okay, Matzav Rabba. He al einai. He guy hits his friend on his eye, v'simai, and he blinds him. Al oznai on his ear, v'charshai. Every day if he becomes deaf that way, the slave goes out free. Because if you damage a slave's organs, then he goes out free. Keneged einai ve'einai raya. Let's say you bang him next to his eye, but he can't see. Keneged oznai ve'einai shemea. Ein every day v'chen. Okay. 1 second.
I'm sorry, you said the middle of the page for the slower.
First word on the line is lecheros.
Thank you.
Okay. So now if you hit him on his ear and he can't hear anymore, you're liable. The Gemara presumes that you'd be liable even if there is no blood, even if his ear is intact. Presumably because you don't actually have the fact that he can't hear is sufficient damage. And the Gemara presumes here that this is similar to having a coin with a form. Removing the form should be no different, that without changing the size of the coin should be no different than taking away the guy's hearing without actually spilling any blood. So the Gemara says it's not a fair comparison. Why? Because Rabba l'tameid Amar Rabba chershel aviv nerag she'ef shlecharisha b'chabura that tifsa the dam and afal sleibunei. Gemara says Rabba is according to his own opinion. Rabba says that now if a guy hits his father and causes blood to flow, the penalty is capital punishment. Now, says Rabba, if a guy makes his father deaf, still has a penalty of capital punishment. Why? Because the only way the ear dies, let's say, can no longer hear, is if there's a small amount of blood that falls into the eardrum, something like that. So therefore, when a guy hits a slave and hits him on his ear and he can't hear anymore, it's not a perfect wound, meaning a wound that does not cause any blood, but yet he loses his hearing. It actually does cause blood, so it is considered chesuri chasri. It's like he sanded down the guy's ear, in the sense that he sanded down the guy's coin. There's actually something missing. So it's not a question. Okay. Rabba says, Hatsurim oizin parosa shechaveroi potter. A guy, I believe this, how they translate tsurim. I believe it means he crushes.
The ear of the cow.
What does he do? He nicks the ear.
Ear of the cow.
Yes, he takes off a small piece of the ear. Potter, he's exempt. Okay, now, what happens if you take off a small piece of the ear? Apparently nothing happens to the cow. The cow is perfectly fine and healthy. It could do exactly the same amount of work. Maybe it won't win the prize at the county fair, but we'll talk about a cow that wasn't going to win the prize anyway. Now, if you want to bring it as a sacrifice, however, it's considered a blemished animal. Can't bring it as a sacrifice. Now, can the owner say, well, this I intended on bringing it as a sacrifice. I'd like you to reimburse me for the difference in price between a sacrifice ready animal and an animal that isn't sacrifice ready. So Rabbi says, Potter, you're exempt. My timer. What's the reason? Hora kedekaimo kaimo. An ox, as it is, it is. He didn't do anything. The kulu shvarim lav kaimi, and not every ox is meant to be brought as a sacrifice. Mosif Ravo, so Rava says, okay, without going into too much detail, mechatos are the waters of chatos. These are waters that are prepared to purify people that are tummy.
Actually, the red heifer.
Combined with water in a certain manner. You did work with them. How do you do work with them? Very simple. You put them into a graduated cylinder to measure their volume, and then you put them on the opposite side of a two-sided scale. Right? So you're using it as a weight. Right? Or you had the red heifer itself, and you did work with it. What's the halacha? You're exempt from the laws of man and liable for the laws of heaven. So Gemara says, specifically work because you can't tell if the animal worked or not. There's no physical, the animal doesn't change if you work the animal. But let's say you nick off a piece of the animal's ear, then the minkar zeka, then you would be liable for the animal. Why? Because the guy could argue I was intending on bringing in a sacrifice. The Amri, the Gemara says not necessarily. The truth of the matter is, even if you nick the animal's ear, pull off a piece of the ear, you're still exempt. So then why does the Brisa give examples of things that don't have any long-term damage? Even work that has no long-term damage at all, it's not even visible whether the animal worked or not, you're still liable under the laws of heaven. Rabbi says, somebody who burns his friend's documents is exempt. The Amrlay, because he says, he says, I just burned your paper. Forget about what was written on the document. Just burn paper, I'll give you back a piece of paper. Okay, now obviously here the document in question was, let's say, a loan document. So it's valuable on its own. So now we have technical, and the point that Rob is trying to make is that you don't have to reimburse him for the value of the loan, only for the value of the paper. Now we have technical difficulties here. Rabbi Bava Kamma has a question. Hey, Kidami, what's the scenario? Top of 98b. Let's say there are witnesses that know what was written down. They know the loan document. Let them rewrite it because they're witnesses. They know they can rewrite the document. If there are no witnesses, then how do we know what exactly happens? The guy rips the document. Who's to say otherwise? Who's to say it was a document in the first place? If there are witnesses, then you can write a new one. And if there are no witnesses, well, maybe he's making it up. Maybe the guy actually, ripped the guy's, quill paper. It was blank, and the victim says there was this document written on it.
What's the question here?
Rabbi says that if you destroy somebody's loan document, you're exempt from the loan. You have to pay for the paper. So Gemara says, technical question: how do you know if there was a loan there? If there are witnesses, then write a new loan document because there are witnesses. And if there are no witnesses, well, maybe there was no loan. In other words, the victim says it was a loan document, and the perpetrator says, well, no, it was blank. Right? Technical question. How exactly does a scenario manifest that you should destroy a loan document and actually know it was a loan document, but not be able to write a new one? Because if there are witnesses, you can always write a new one. Rava says, very simple question. It's a scenario where they trust either the perpetrator or they trust the victim. They trust him. Everybody who's in the discussion trusts whatever they say. Rav Dovid Yehudah says, "Hadarabba machlokes of Shimon v'Rabbanan." This machlokes between Rabba and This statement of Rabba that ripping up a document exempts you for the document is a debate between Reb Shimon and the rabbis. Reb Shimon the Amar Davar Garam L'Mamin Kamma Dami Mechayev. Rabban the Amar Davar Garam L'Mamin Lav Kamma Dami Lo Mechayev. What was a Davar Hagaram L'Mamin? So this takes us back, a couple of pages. Davar Garam L'Mamin. What is that? A guy gives his friend an animal to watch. Okay, a guy doesn't watch it appropriately. It turns into a sharam wood, and the animal is decreed for death penalty, and they give the death penalty to the animal. But before the animal is executed, the watchman quickly takes the animal and runs home. He runs over to the house of the guy who owned the animal, and he returns the animal. He says, by the way, it's going to be stoned tomorrow, but here it is. Right? So what's the halacha? The halacha is that is considered returned. The animal is considered returned. The watchman is exempt. Now, says Reb Shimon, therefore, because the watchman can cover his obligation by returning the watched animal, or returning the animal, even though it's getting a death penalty tomorrow. Because of that, if somebody damages the animal, they're exempt from paying. I'm sorry, according to Reb Shimon, they're liable to pay. Because this would cause financial obligation for the watchman. The watchman has the animal and he's able to return it and exempt himself from financial obligation. Therefore, this is considered money. Whereas, let's say I had my own personal sharam wood that killed, and it's going to be killed now. And somebody damages my sharam wood that's about to be killed tomorrow. They would be exempt from damages because it's isur hana, it's prohibited to derive benefit. And therefore, there's no effect of the damage. What have you done? You've taken an animal that's going to be murdered tomorrow, and nobody will be able to benefit from the carcass, and you've killed it now. Nothing happened, basically. That
Timing difference.
what? It's the same difference, exactly. Okay, so this is the idea of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says davar agarim l'mammon, even though it's not actually money, but because it has the ability to cause financial harm, therefore you have to pay for it. So the Gemara is proposing that a document is the same thing, right? A document, even though it's a piece of paper, but it causes financial harm. We're together, Eric?
How do you settle that?
So this is the Gemara is saying that this is a debate. The Korn Shimon that says davar germ, that says that that because it has the ability to cause financial harm, we recognize it as money. According to Shimon, you would need to pay. You would need to pay for ripping up your friend's documents. According to the rabbis, you would not.
The price of paper?
No, according to the rabbis, you pay the price of paper. According to Shimon, you pay the full value of the document. Not like Rabbah. Rabbah is not going into Shimon's opinion here. Maskell or Rafuna Breder of Yeshua, Rafuna the son of Rabbi Yeshua says, "Anyone to Sham leather Shem Dover Garm Lamam Kamam Dami Dover Sheikre Mammon Kiderabah." It makes sense to apply the laws of Rabbi Shimon in something that's fundamentally money. Okay, what does that mean? It means a cow, an ox, is fundamentally money. It has value to it. Unlike a document, which is not fundamentally money. There's no inherent value to a document, right? Other than the paper that it's written on, which in this case is used, right? What's the value of a used light bulb, right? Or a used battery for that matter. Not very much. So this isn't money. A document isn't money. A document is a representation of money. In other words, when does Reb Shimon say that an item that represents money is considered money? When the item principally is money. It does have value, like a cow or an ox. But an item that principally doesn't have value, like a paper, the fact that it can cause financial harm is not sufficient to determine that item is considered itself as money. In other words, we look at its ability to cause harm only in conjunction with the fact that it itself principally has value. You need both. Okay, what's an example? The Amar Rabba, Gozel chametz lefnei Pesach, u'boach v'sarfai. A guy steals chametz before Pesach. He waits over Pesach. The chametz can no longer be used. His friend goes over and burns the chametz. V'sarfai may potter, and he burns it on Pesach. He's exempt. Shekom tzavin olavari, because everybody is obligated to burn it on Pesach. La'achar Pesach. Let's say he burns it after Pesach. Machlokes Reb Shimon v'Rabbanan. It's the debate between Reb Shimon and the rabbis. Reb Shimon the Amar Davar Germ L'Mamim Kamam Dami Chayev. According to Reb Shimon says that the robber could redeem his obligation, meaning the robber has an obligation to return the chametz. And even though it's chametz you cannot use because it's gone through Pesach, owned by a Jew in a Jew's property, doesn't make a difference. He's still returning the chametz as is. he wouldn't have to pay. So says Rav Shimon, that's a davar garam l'momen. He's taking an item that principally has value, just chametz, and it can cause financial harm because if the robber doesn't return it, he has to pay. So therefore, if you burn it, then you're liable to pay. According to the rabbis, you'd be exempt. However, does the law of Rav Shimon apply in something that doesn't principally have any value, like a loan document? So the Gemara really accepts this critique. It's not dependent on the debate of Rav Shimon or Rabbanan. The Gemara says it's dependent on a different debate. Those judges that rule the laws of Garmi, we'll explain in a moment, according to them, you pay the value of the loan. However, if we do not have the law of Garmi, then you pay the value of a piece of paper. There was a story. Apparently, when Rav Ashi, when he was young, he ripped up somebody's document, and when his contemporary found out when he got older, he made him pay. Kishur Talma means like fresh beans. It means like a liquid commodity. He made him pay for the damage. Okay, what does Dina de Garmi? This is a very difficult topic. It comes up very often in Bava Kamma, Mitzvah Basra. There's two categories. One's called groma, one's called garmi. Groma is an indirect damage. Garmi is more direct, but not specifically direct. What's an example of garmi? A judge makes a mistake in his ruling. That's garmi. So he's sort of right. He did damage, but didn't actually do the damage. He sort of caused the damage to happen. Similarly, if you rip up your friend's document, you cause a damage. Your friend can't collect the loan, although the loan exists whether the document is here or not. The document doesn't determine the loan. Mm-hmm. So if you hold to the laws of Garmi, then you would have to pay because you caused damage, and if not, you would be exempt from paying. Okay, chametz overall of a Pesach. If you have chametz that's gone for Pesach, you can give back the chametz as is. Mantano. Who is the opinion that says that with regard to Isuri Hana are things that you cannot derive benefit from? For example, chametz after Pesach. You say, but you're still allowed to return that. If that's the stolen item, you can still return it as is. So, Rav Chizda says Rav Yaakov. It's Rav Yaakov. The Tanya we learned. Shor shehimitz ad shalening martinai. You have an animal that kills. Before the animal before the animal's verdict to be killed was handed out. Mochar, if you sell it mochar, then the sale is valid. Hekdisha, if you sanctify it, mukdash, it's sanctified. Shachtai, if you slaughtered it, sorry mutter, you're allowed to benefit from the flesh. Hechzira shomer l'bailov, if the watchman returned it to its owner, muchsar, it's considered returned. Mishnei Mardinai. However, once the verdict has been issued that the animal will be executed, machar, if you sell it, so now a murderous animal that's executed, you cannot derive benefit from the animal. It's considered what we call again isure hana, prohibited to derive benefit. Isur is prohibited, and hana is any type of benefit. You can't eat it. You can't do anything. You can't have any benefit from it. Okay.
What about victim compensation? Well,
Yeah,
actually, it's a serious point.
You got to ask your insurance company.
What I'm saying is that the animal did grievous damage to another family and you have to kill the animal, then can something be done with what's left of the animal to turn into some sort of money to give to the family that's been grieved? No, the perpetrator, in this case, the owner of the aggressor animal has to pay. Depending on if it was a moor or Tom. Just plain, you burn the animal or send it to a landfill once you've killed it, then the murderous animal. Correct. Okay, all right, check. Amazing myself actually paying attention. Okay. Once, however, the verdict was issued, then if you sell it, the sale is not valid. If you sanctified it, and in mukdish, it's not sanctified. Shachta, if you slaughtered it, basari osar, the flesh is prohibited. If you returned
1 second. If the watchman returns the animal with the verdict of death, it's not considered returned. However, Rabbi Yaakov says that no, it's still considered returned. So now here we have an item that's prohibited to derive benefits. Can the watchman return the item? According to Rabbi Yaakov, he could. According to the rabbis, he can't. Presumably, the debate here is if somebody steals something that's prohibited to derive benefits, can he return it as is? It must be. This is the debate. Rabbi Yaakov Savar. Rabbi Yaakov says with an item that's prohibited to derive benefit, either an ox that has a verdict for the death penalty, or chametz that was left over Pesach. You could still say Harei Shalach Fanecha. You can return the stolen item and say what is yours is in front of you, right? As is, as I stole it, I'm returning it. Rabbanan Savrin, the rabbis say, you cannot say with regard to the laws of Yisur Hana, what is yours is in front of you. In other words, once it's become prohibited to derive benefit, it's not the same item I stole. I stole an ox, and you're giving back to me an ox that's useless. Nobody's allowed to derive benefit from it. It's not considered returns. Right? Same thing is true with chametz. You stole chametz before Pesach. In other words, in English, you stole my lunch, right? And now, what do you steal? What do you steal? You're giving me back landfill. It's not the same thing.
So if you return the animal before the
verdict, for sure is returned. Then everyone agrees, because then if the owner slaughters it, he can still derive benefit. And the same thing's true if you give the chametz back before Pesach. You know, you gave him back his lunch. But after Pesach, it's useless. Okay, that's the proposal. Now the Gemara rejects this proposal. Perhaps is a different, separate debate between Rav Yaakov and the rabbis. It could be everybody agrees with regard to an item that's prohibited to derive benefit. You can still return it. In other words, you stole the guy's lunch, you're giving him back landfill. Happens to be it's identical. It's the same bag of Oreo cookies, right? You can't eat it. It's the same ox. It's just that now he's going to go into he'll be burned, whatever, something like that. Okay, why the imkain niflik b'chametz on Pesach? Because if that was the debate, they could have debated about chametz on Pesach, which is the same story, same debate. Okay, 1 second. Rabba. So what is the debate? Rabba proposes hacha b'goymer dina shal shor shaloi b'fanav k'miflagi. Whether you can issue the verdict of an ox without the owner present. Bonan savri ein goymer dina shal shor shaloi b'fanav. Okay, the rabbis say that you need the owner of the ox to be present at the time of the verdict.
The owner or the ox
Okay.
itself.
Sorry, you need the ox. My mistake. You need the ox itself. You need the ox itself to be present. The ox is to be present at the court. So therefore, the owner says, the owner says basically, had it been up to me, I would never have allowed my murderous ox to get into the court. I would have sent it into the fields and would have hid it from the court, and therefore I would never have lost my ox. But now that you're in control of the ox, you were stupid enough to send the ox into court, and that's why I'm losing my ox. Rabbi Yaakov says it doesn't make a difference. We can issue a verdict of the ox even if the ox is in the forest. What would you do? You would have put it in the forest. They would have issued the verdict without the ox present, and that's acceptable as well. And therefore, the ox is your ox, basically. The original owner's ox would have become worthless regardless. And therefore, I have a right to return the ox as is, because nothing that I did, it wasn't my negligence that caused the verdict of the ox to be issued. Rav Chizda finds Rav Bar Shmuel. Have you taught anything with regard to Isur Hana? Amarlei, 1 second. Hold on. Okay, so let's just clarify this. Just go a little bit of history. We started off the Gemara. The Gemara says, in the name of the Gemara talks about chametz and Pesach. The Gemara says, who is the opinion that says that a surah and all you can say harei shalach l'fanecha? Who is the opinion that says if you have an animal that you're prohibited to, you have a item that is prohibited to derive benefit from, it can still be returned if that was a stolen item. And Rav Chizda was the proposal to say it was Rav Yaakov. Rav Chizda's proposal was rejected by Rabbah. So Rav Chizda says to Rabbah, do you have anything else to say on the subject? So Amalei says, he says, I do. Tanina, we learned, Veheshav Sekzela. You return the stolen item. That he stole. That's obviously repetition. Right? Veheshav Sekzela Asher Gazel. Return the stolen item that he stole. Right? Skip the that he stole. Return the stolen item. I get it, right? Obviously, the stolen item is the one he stole. So what does it mean? One second. Matam loimer asher gozal yachzer ke'en shegozal. If the item is in the same condition as when he stole it, what does that mean? From here we learned gozal matbe'av and nifsal. He stole a coin, and the coin became invalidated by the king, which you spoke. Rabbi Brown discussed yesterday. Peres verkivu, the fruits, and they rotted. This is problematic because the fruits rotted is actually a substantial change. We'll discuss this in a moment. We'll get back to it in a second. Okay, yayin v'hechmetz. This one I think is yayin v'hikram. I don't know what v'hikram means. It's not quite sour. They change it here. It has to be that was changed. I'm sorry, v'nis nasach. That's the better version. V'nis nasach means it was poured for idol worship, or it's poured by non-Jews. It's become prohibited. The wines become prohibited, even though there's no physical change. Truma v'nitmis. Truma it became tamei. Chametz v'overall of a Pesach. Chametz that's gone through Pesach. Behema v'nevda ba'avera. An animal that has been involved in bestiality. V'shor achla nigmar dinai. And an ox before its verdict has been issued. You can return the item as is, and you tell him harei shalach fanecha. Here is the item that's in front of you. Rabbanon. This is the opinion of the rabbis. Again, according to Rabbi Yaakov, even if the animal has had its verdict issued, you're still able to return the item. And in this brayta it says no, only before the verdict was issued, you can return it. Whose opinion? This is a rabbi's opinion. Uktani, and it clearly states chametz v'overall of a Pesach aimer leharei shalach fanecha. And yet the rabbis still agree that with regard to other scenarios of items that are prohibited in benefits, you could still return it as is. Together? So, in other words, Rav Chizda originally proposed that this concept of returning a stolen item that you can't derive benefit is the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. And the brayta clearly says the opposite. It's not the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov, it's the opinion of the rabbis. For sure, it's Rabbi Yaakov's opinion too. Why? Because Rabbi Yaakov says that even if you return an animal with a death verdict, it's still returned. And the rabbis say, no, only before the verdict was issued. And the brayta says before the verdict was issued also, like the rabbis. And the brayta still says you can return chametz after Pesach, as is. So this is clearly undermines Rav Chizda's entire Gemara Rav Chizda attempted to prove. So he told him, he says, you're right. He says, you found the brayta, I appreciate it. He says, but don't tell my students because then they'll give me a hard time. Okay. Now, as I pointed out to you before, peris verkivu, fruit and they rotted. Fruit and they rotted is a substantial change. That's a physical change. It's very different than taking a coin, like an old shekel to a new shekel, which has been invalidated by the government, where the coin is identical. So the Gemara says, 1 second. For Hatzanan, we learned in the Mishnah, a line before the Mishnah on 98b, peris verkivu mishalim b'shas exela. That if the fruit rotted, you pay you pay money because you can't use rotted fruit. So Amar Papa, you're right. Kancher kivu kula and kancher kivu miktasa. If they entirely rotted, then you're right. You'd have to pay full value. But if there was a small amount of rot, I'd presume this is like the type of when fruit gets old, it starts getting moldy slowly or gets ruined slowly.
Wrinkly.
Yeah. If that happened, then you can return the fruit as is. That's not considered a damage. Okay, well, let's continue. It's a good place to start. Nasan l'umnin, you handed over an item to a repair shop. L'saken to fix it. V'kilkalu, and they messed up. Sounds familiar? Chayovin l'shalom, they have to pay for their damages. Nasan l'cheresh shida teva umigdal. You gave a woodworker either a box or a tower or a carriage. L'saken to fix. V'kilkalu, and he messed up. Chayav l'shalom, he has to pay. V'abanoi shekibel of lister as a kaisel. You hired in a demolition team, right? A contractor to what is it called? To gut a house, knock down walls.
Demolish the wall.
V'shiber ha'avonim oishezikan, and instead of just knocking down the wall, he also broke the stones, or otherwise damaged the materials. Chayav v'shalom, he has to pay. Ha'yisaysim mitzad zev and nafel mitzad achar. If he was destroying from one side, he destroyed one side of the building, and the other side fell down. So Potter, he's exempt. But if it was because of his own force, he is liable. Okay, we have another 4 minutes. Just want to go through a few of the key ideas which we'll be discussing over the next day. Yeah, specifically, okay. So let's talk about an umen. One of the key ideas here is we'll start with yeshno l'schiras mitchila asayfai and umen kaina b'shvach klei. What does that mean? So let's say I hire a professional. Okay, there's a number of different ways to hire him. Okay, let's say I give him a job. I say, here's my car. I'd like you to fix it. You know, so the guy gets working on the car. He starts taking things apart. He starts fixing it, and then he finishes his job. Charges me $1,000. Do we say that every 15 seconds, the guy earned a quarter, and the job took 3 hours? I don't know, my math is not perfect here, but that's $1,000. Okay,
Right.
or maybe even less than every 3 seconds he's earning himself a quarter. So do we say he's constantly building up the total value of this work, and then at the end, and it's all a loan until the end, in which the loan payment is due? Or do we say no? Eina l'schiras ela b'sayf. You finish a job, get you $1,000. It's not like it's constant. The money is constantly building up and adding up. Again, the key words here is yeshno l'schiras mitchila va'ad sayfai. Does a hired worker work from the beginning to the end, or eina l'schiras ela b'sayf? The hired worker only gets his money at the end. That's the first point. The second question is umen kaina b'shvach klei. Okay, to give a better example here, we'll talk about. Let's say I bought a billet of Brazilian redwoods, okay, and I gave it to my I can't remember the word here, the guy who makes the guitars, and I want him to make a guitar for me. What? Luthier. Thank you. Thank you, Luthier. He's gonna make me a guitar. So what's he gonna do? He's gonna take these pieces of wood, maybe it's a billet of oak for an electric guitar, and he's gonna mill it. He's gonna sand it, and he's gonna polish it and plane it until it's shrunk down to size, and now it's sort of the base of an electric guitar. The question is, umen kaina b'shvach kli or not? So now we've taken a blank piece of wood, and we've turned it into this extremely lucrative piece of wood. It's the same piece of wood, it's just a little nicer, and the edges are a little shinier and smoother, etc. Does the worker here who's making the woods, he's milling it, is he acquire the woods as he's milling it? Is it now, we consider now this is his item because he's transformed something that was blank into something useful. And this is a debate called uman kaina b'shvach kli or uman eina kaina b'shvach kli. And there's another point here is, let's say instead of just building this billet, he inlaid it with, let's say, 24K or diamond or something like that. So now not only has he sanded, has played with the wood, but he's added stuff to the woods, right? He's put things on the woods. Does he acquire that or not? How do we view the stuff he puts into it? Does it mean that now he owns the whole guitar, or he just still owns only the stuff he put in? This is part of the discussion for tomorrow, and tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, right?
8 o'clock. That's all.
Okay, good to see everybody today.